Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Hey, Aqualung, drying in the cold sun, watching as the pretty package.
Castlevania was released for the NES in 1987, 1 year after the Japanese Famicom version came out. You'll control Simon Belmont in a side-scrolling platformer who travels through a huge-ass castle riddled with ghosts and demons and shit, with the main objective of finding and defeating Dracula. Your main weapon is the whip, which can be upgraded if you find these whip icons. There are 3 forms of the whip, each one larger and more powerful than the last. There are also secondary weapons. There's the dagger, which fires straight, the holy water, which has limited range but will ignite a flame on the ground where it lands, the axe, which will sail high into the air, the boomerang, which will come back to you, and the stopwatch, which freezes all the enemies on the screen momentarily. You can only carry one of these secondary weapons at a time. Once you pick up a new one, the old one is replaced. On top of that, you have a limited amount of ammo for these weapons. Another item you'll pick up along the way are these hearts, which will serve as your ammunition. Strangely, they're not health power-ups, as in most games, but oh well. Thankfully, the hearts you collect aren't specified to the particular weapon you have equipped. In other words, once you pick up a new weapon, you'll retain your full heart count. The small hearts count for 1 heart, and the big ones count for 5. Each weapon uses up 1 heart for each time you fire, except for the stopwatch, which uses up 3 hearts, and since the enemies are only frozen for a couple seconds, it's not even worth it. Aside from the hearts and the whip power-ups that I mentioned earlier, you'll also find a cross, which will wipe out all the enemies on the screen, money bags, which will give you points, gold fluid, which makes you invincible for a short period of time, a chicken leg, which replenishes your health, a double shot represented by this Roman numeral 2 icon, which will allow you to fire 2 shots of your special weapon at a time, and a triple shot, which does the same thing, only with 3 shots. Most of these items you'll find in these candles if you whip them down, similar to the question mark blocks in Super Mario Bros. And there are also some items hidden in the walls. If you whip these specific areas, it'll break the wall apart and you'll find the item. You start out with 4 lives, with a health meter that decreases when you take a hit. One thing that sucks is every time you get hit, you get knocked back about 5 feet. You get recovery time, so you at least don't have to worry about getting cheap hits from enemies behind you, but if you're in front of a pit and you get knocked into it, you're dead. When you die, you're downgraded back to your regular whip and you lose your secondary weapon, but it usually doesn't take you too long to find the whip upgrades, including after you die when fighting a boss. You'll respawn close to the boss, and you'll be able to upgrade your whip again along the way. The downside there is you can take some hits if there are enemies and start the boss battle again with depleted health. Each level branches off right into the next one, since the whole game takes place in one castle. Even though it's one castle, visually there's a decent amount of variety from stage to stage. The backgrounds are distinct, and the levels are laid out and designed very well. And you're not just walking around mindlessly whipping shit. You have to get used to enemies' tendencies and time your attacks well. So there is a strategic element to the game, and it definitely provides a challenge. Part of that challenge, though, stems from the flawed jumping controls. You can't control yourself in midair, your trajectory is always the same, and since there are a lot of airborne enemies when you have to jump to attack, you could end up taking some hits because of this, especially if you're around pits. So this takes some getting used to. The controls are responsive, and your walking and whip controls are pretty fluid, it's just that the jumping is stiff. But then again, attacking with your secondary weapon can also be awkward. You have to press up and B to use these weapons, which isn't difficult as far as switching the position of your thumbs. But because you're pressing up, you can't move around at the same time, and if you don't hold up just before pressing B, you could end up firing the whip by accident. It's not totally broken, but the execution could have been a little bit better. Perhaps pressing select to toggle between your whip and the secondary weapon would have been more effective. Then you're just pressing B to attack the whole time. Climbing the stairs can be a bit quirky too. Holding up or down will send you up the stairs, but if you continue holding up as you get to the top, you can slip back down. One way to avoid this is to hold right or left instead of up or down once you're on the stairs. However, you can still find yourself accidentally climbing the stairs when trying to attack with your secondary weapon, another issue with these weapons. Now it sounds like I'm trashing the controls here, but really, aside from these 2 problems, there's nothing else to complain about. The fun factor level is high. Like I said, the game is challenging. You'll get no complaints about this game being too easy, but it's not borderline impossible either, except for one particular boss that's a huge pain in the ass, but I'll get into that later. The soundtrack is great, which isn't a surprise coming from a Konami NES game. The songs all fit with the dark, gothic atmosphere, but at the same time they're generally upbeat enough to fit with the pace, and there's much more than enough variety to make this a solid, memorable soundtrack. So you start out with a short cutscene of Simon entering the castle gates, and then the game begins. Start by whipping these torches and grabbing whip upgrades, hearts, and the dagger. There are no enemies until you get inside the castle. There'll be several zombies at the beginning. They don't do anything besides walk towards you, so whip them down and take out the candles for some items. When you get to the stairs, let the panther jump over you and climb the stairs. It'll pounce once you get close enough to it. If you don't want to deal with the panthers up here, slip down and head this way, but there are more items in the candles up top. Just be ready to attack with the whip as soon as the panther attacks. You have to be quick. The bats fly in slow, wavy patterns. Take them out and whip this wall here to break it apart and grab the chicken. These weird fucking lizard men will jump out of the water and try to come after you. They're not too fast, but they can make for an obstacle when trying to jump over these pits, so be ready to attack in midair. Down the home stretch, you'll face more zombies. Take them out and grab all the items from the candles, particularly the axe right here. You're going to want to use it for the boss battle coming up, which is a giant bat. There's a double shot power-up hidden here. Grab that first. Then put yourself below him and to the side so your axes will reach him and fire away. He moves pretty slow, swooping in from time to time, but he's not too hard to predict. Just keep this up, and if he gets close to you, feel free to use the whip. You shouldn't have a problem with him. The beginning of Stage 2 has some of these knights. They're slow, but they take a decent amount of hits, unless you have the most powerful whip. Attack furiously to take them down, and if you can, stand on the edge of the platform to keep them away from you and attack from there. You won't have to worry about getting hit. Soon after, you'll encounter the Medusas, which can be a big pain in the balls. They fly in a long wavy pattern, and they're continuous until you get through the area they're in. So you have to project where the safe spot is to stand, and then pass through, repeating the process slowly so you can keep enough distance to see the next one coming. You can whip them, but the next one pops up immediately, so unless you wipe them out as you're walking, you're better off letting them pass by. They're not too difficult like this by themselves, but later on in the game they'll show up when there are other enemies on the screen at the same time, and that's when things start to become a pain. Grab the hidden chicken in this block here, followed by another one right after the door. Then a little bit later, these hydraulic spikes will come crashing down fast and then raise slowly. Creep past the one in front of you as it raises and wait in between. There's not a lot of room here, so be cautious. Grab the hidden double shot here, and then these dragon head statues will fire 2 fireballs at a time usually. They take a shitload of hits, so wait for the break between attacks, jump in front, and unleash continuously. Just keep blasting them as fast as you can, so if it does get a fireball out, the whip will take it out. The last corridor before the boss is another line of Medusas. Avoid them and grab the shit from the candles if you can. The boss is a giant Medusa, as if you haven't seen enough of these bastards in this level. It doesn't move very fast, but it's big enough to get in your way and cause problems. It also drops snakes that slither across the floor. Use holy water if you have any to keep them at bay. Keep your distance and whip the Medusa as rapidly as possible. It'll freeze up sometimes, giving you more hits. Use the platform on the right as a means of getting away and jumping over it to prevent yourself from being cornered. Once you're done with it, it's on to level 3. These little Igor bastards jump around like fucking Mexican jumping beans, and they're a pain in the ass. The best way to take them out is to slowly creep in their direction. Like the panthers, they'll pounce once you get close enough to them. Once they jump, unleash the whip, and if you time it right, they'll jump right into it. If that fails, just wail away at him. He'll move all over the freaking place. At least there's a hidden chicken in here to replenish some health if you lost any. These skeletons will dance around, throwing bones at you. Avoid them and line him up with a shot when he stops. Watch the crows. They'll fly overhead, swoop down, and sometimes pause and change angles. Anticipate their maneuvers and take them down. The next corridor is a line of Medusas. Avoid them, and after climbing another staircase, you've got some of the dragon statues to contend with. Take out the crows that are perched up on the statues before they even fly off. Whip the dragon statues unmercifully, and avoid the Medusas at the end that get in your way while trying to fight off this statue. Get up close to it so you can wipe out the Medusa at the same time. After that is the boss, a pair of mummies. Standing between them and trying to go toe-to-toe with them is a bad idea. If you can, get to either side of them so they're both in front of you, then you only have to attack one side, and you can hit them both at once. But if you don't mind taking the cheap way out, just stand on this block over here, kneel, and whip. Easy as pie. If you want to do it the hard way, there's a hidden chicken in this block right here, but you won't have your platform anymore if you want to go the easy route. Early on in stage 4, there's this platform that shifts across this water pit. Don't bother going for the candle up here, unless you can time your jump perfectly. A big heart isn't worth dying for. Kill the lizard men and bats, and when you get to this long water pit, wait for the platform, get on it, duck, kill the bat that comes along, hop onto land here, then get on the next platform and duck again, ignoring the lizard man that shoots up. Just let the platform take you past him. Then carefully hop onto the next platform just as they each stop. Once again, try to avoid the candles above water. You'll climb the stairs and encounter a clusterfuck. A flock of eagles fly by, carrying Igors. You have to kill these eagles before they drop the Igors, or at least kill them on the way down. Otherwise, it'll create a potential mess of things with several of these bastards jumping on your ass. Once you get the timing down, it's not so bad. At the end of the path is a snake skeleton. It'll shoot fireballs out of its mouth and shift vertically. Aim for the head with the whip and attack frequently so you can take out the fireballs. You'll get a shitload of goodies from him after you wipe him out, and then after a corridor of candles and more items, you'll face yet another of these pricks. Take him out to grab your shit, including a hidden chicken in this block, and then get ready for yet another battle with one of these skeletons. Crouch down here when whipping him to keep him from getting too low and out of reach. There's a hidden heart in the block right here, and then it's the boss, Frankenstein's monster and an Igor. Igor will jump around like a maniac and shoot fireballs. He's the real threat here. Frankenstein doesn't do shit besides walk back and forth, but he's also the target. Whip Igor to freeze him momentarily, and then go to town on Frankenstein a few times, then break away. Try to keep an eye on both of them. Even though Frankenstein is just wandering around, you could bump into him trying to avoid Igor. Take your shots at Frankenstein when Igor gives you enough room to, and take as many shots as you possibly can each time. Eventually you'll take him out. The beginning of stage 5 consists of mostly skeletons and Igors. Use the same strategies with them as you've done earlier. Then you'll encounter these red skeletons, which are slower and don't fire anything, but they never die. They'll just fall apart and pick themselves back up again, like dry bones in Super Mario 3. Right before you fight the first one though, be sure to grab this hidden double shot up here, and then after the hallway of red skeletons and Igors, grab this hidden chicken. Then you've got these knights with shields. They take a shitload of hits and they throw axes at you, both low and high, so crouching or jumping could come into play here. Keep your distance from them so you can see their attacks coming, but stay close so you're not far away from reach with your whip or special weapon if you have to. Climb up here and break away the wall for a double shot, and keep these knights at bay. You may encounter two at once, so be ready for axes at all times. There are a couple of dragon statues ahead, including one at the top of the staircase. Wait for the fireballs to clear and quickly get up there, and you can take them out if you want, but you can always just keep on going. After the next flight of stairs is the corridor from hell, but first grab the hidden chicken here. You'll need all the health you can get. There are Medusas and Axe Knights out the ass. You're practically always having to deal with two of them at the same time. It seems like what you'd want to do is line up in a spot where the Medusa will miss you, and then just wait for the Knight to walk close enough to you so you can hit him. But he never does, the stubborn bastard. Walk towards him, keeping the pressure on him so he'll back up, and when the Medusas come, time your jump so you'll sail over them, and attack continuously. Now if you thought that was bad, guess what waits at the end of the corridor? The toughest boss in the game, the one I mentioned earlier as a monumental pain in the ass. It's the Grim Reaper, and that's appropriate because killing Death is about as impossible as it sounds. He'll float around the room and throw up to 4 sickles at you. They don't really have a definitive pattern, they just follow you around. Try your damnedest to get between them, and when you have some room and you're in front of the Reaper, fire relentlessly. I'm talking about until your fucking thumbs bleed, just whip the shit out of him. And then when the sickles are getting closer to you, get away, and repeat the process of desperately trying to get away from the damn sickles on top of avoiding the Reaper himself. It's hard as shit, even with full energy, which is a miracle if you can get here in full energy thanks to the fucking Corridor of Doom. Which, by the way, if you die fighting the Reaper, and I'm sure you will, you'll be sent back to the beginning of the corridor again, so good luck. When you finally take him out, it's onto the final stage, which is actually quite short. It starts out with the line of giant bats, the first boss of the game. You don't have to kill them this time, and I wouldn't even bother. Just give him a shot to temporarily freeze him, and then just keep on walking. You can even sneak by some of them if you jump correctly. Then kill the skeletons and eagles that drop the Igors, and slip down here to grab a hidden chicken. When you get here, wait till the coast is clear, then hop down and head up the stairs. If you have the room, grab the hidden double shot here and continue your way up the stairs. This will lead you to Dracula. First, grab all the shit from the candles along the way. Dracula emerges and opens his cape to fire 3 fireballs in spread shot formation before disappearing and then reappearing. This is his only attack pattern, so the best thing to do is wait for him to show up, and just as he appears, jump towards him, so you'll leap over the fireballs and whip him in the head, which is his weak point. Be fleet of foot here. You don't want him reappearing on top of you, and when you eventually take him out, decapitating him in the process, he'll change forms into this gargoyle creature of sorts, and naturally you have to essentially fight another boss without any health upgrades. He'll leap high in the air, and sometimes low, then spit 3 fireballs at a time. Use holy water on him to keep him in place for a bit and whip his ass. Or really whip his head, that's his weak spot too. Once he jumps, run under him, although you have much better success with this when he jumps high. As long as you stay on him, you won't see the fireball attack nearly as much, so you mainly gotta worry about getting landed on in this case. If you die, you at least start at the bottom of the staircase with no enemies to deal with leading to Dracula. Even with the game over, you get to start here, so you essentially have unlimited battles with him at full health as long as you don't shut off the game. When you're done with him, Simon implodes the castle and the credits roll. So that's Castlevania, a fun platformer that paved the way for many sequels, spawning a very successful franchise. It may have a few issues, but none of them prevent it from being a classic. And that wraps up this edition of Aqualung's Game Reviews. See you next time.